I guess. Okay. So this week on the podcast, I'm happy to have Craig O'Shaughnessy, one of the best tennis strategy analysts in the world, if not the best. He was a mastermind behind Dustin Brown's win over Rafael Nadal at Wimbledon and was on Novak Djokovic's team most recently. Craig, thanks so much for having me, taking time.
Pleasure to be here, and looking forward to talking tennis.
I guess
we're not playing a lot at the moment, but we can talk about it.
I guess the first thing listeners really want to know is your background. I understand you've never played professional tennis. You graduated with a journalism degree, and how did that journey from journalism to tennis coaching and analyst come about?
I grew up in a small country town in Australia called Albury, on the border of New South Wales and Victoria, on the Murray River. And because of the Murray River, there's lots of grass courts around that area. So as a junior, my club had 25 grass courts, and I just played a lot as a kid. I wasn't one of the best juniors in Australia. I didn't go to a lot of the biggest tournaments, but I was pretty good for the region. Out of high school, I worked for a year and a half as a sports journalist for a newspaper in my town called the Border Mail. Great experience. But then it's like, I want to go to the States. I want to play college tennis. So I came over to the US, a couple of different schools, graduated from Bagel with a journalism degree and played tennis there. And that's kind of the journalism side. So a little bit of on-the-job training and a little bit of studying at school, and I'm playing a lot of tennis in between. So I didn't do anything with the journalism side for about 20 years in between writing for the small country paper in Australia. And then the New York Times came and asked me for some information on some serve analysis. They were putting out a preview for the US Open. And I said, well, I can give you the data, but I can also write the story for you. So I wrote the story, then started doing a lot of those tournament stories, so match analysis stories, and they hadn't had that kind of review in their paper before. So it just kind of grew from that, and the ATP came calling, and then I started the website, and everything has come full circle, whereas it was either kind of journalism or tennis, and now it's a combination of both. So I do a lot of writing still for the ATP and the New York Times and my website, and I greatly enjoy it. So that's kind of how all that came together.
I mean, you were the strategist for Dustin Brown when he upset Rafa Nadal at Wimbledon 2015. And I guess this is a question you've been asked so many times, but how did you mastermind one of the greatest upsets in Wimbledon history?
Well, first, a couple of things. First of all, Dustin's got to play it. I mean, Dustin gets the credit here. He's the one that went out there and played the match. It seems like a big upset, and I guess in some ways it was, but we really did our preparation. So as an analyst, either for my website or writing for the ATP, I mean, Nadal is a guy that I've studied extensively, just serve patterns and body language and where he's stronger on the court, where he's weaker, dividing the court up. So it was just fortunate that we had a guy on the other side of the net that I knew everything about. I would venture to know that, certainly I don't know if there'd be anybody else in the world that had studied Rafa as much as I had at that period of time. So we had a couple of days to prepare, and it's a combination of taking Dustin's very unique, aggressive game style and telling Dustin and showing Dustin and having him expect, this is what Rafa's going to do. This is where you need to counter his pattern. How you break him down. This is how you take your game style and plug it in. And, Dustin gets a ton of credit for going out there and sticking to it and making it happen. And he played an amazing match, and Rafa, I don't think did, and I think Dustin gets all the credit for that. There's a couple of times Rafa served and volleyed in the match. And, when you have an opponent that is swarming the net, a strategy is to actually be the first to get there so that they don't get the net anymore. You can cut the net off from a guy like Dustin Brown if you serve and volley and if you approach. And Dustin had Rafa serve and volley a couple of times, and Rafa did great. He won those points, but he didn't stick with it. So, I think Dustin really rattled the cage mentally, and just kept attacking and attacking. And Rafa could not think his way out of that match. So it was a spectacular match to be in the coach's box with a bunch of friends, and Scott Wittenberg, who was coaching Dustin full time. I was not. I came in very much just to for that match and a little bit of help with others, but specifically for that match. So Scott gets a ton of credit for getting him into that situation, and Dustin for playing it. And then, the icing on the cake was like, well, I know that guy intimately on the other side of the net, and here's how you're going to beat him.
And let's say Rafa's serving deuce. Where does he usually serve then?
Rafa loves the tee. He loves the tee. And back in 2015, he's just, against Roger, as he wrote in his book, I mean, it's no secret. He's like, if I had to hit the ball to Roger's backhand 20 times, I'm going to hit it 20 times. So in 2015, at that period of time, there wasn't a lot of variety in Rafa's game. He really did stick to his patterns, and they didn't. I don't know what I don't know. You got to go and ask Tony and Rafa, those questions. But how good was their homework on Dustin? I think we won that battle. So Rafa, continually serves down the tee. And if you're sitting there waiting for it, it's really not that tough for serve, especially a second serve. So, Dustin stepped in so well in the deuce court. And in fact, he really won those points, those second serve return points, before the point had even started, because he stood way over. A lot of players will stand in their normal position with their right foot around the singles line. And then Rafa hits that sliding serve down the tee. And so their first move is to go sideways, whereas Dustin just moved over, and then his first move is to go straight at it. And then, we know that Rafa's going to serve and fall to his backhand, thinking the opponent's going to go there. So, straight down the line's wide open. And Dustin kept repeatedly doing that, and was never, Rafa never changed directions enough. He never went out wide enough with his second serve in the deuce court, or enough at the body. And Dustin really feasted on that strategy.
I mean, I've been looking at some of your presentations the past few days. You say that at every single level, from professional to juniors, the first 4 shots in the rally are the ones that win you the match. And that's how Djokovic won the US Open in 2018. Tell me the stats to back that claim up. So I think, there's 2 ways. There's two types of stats in tennis. So there's the stats where we just count things. It's simply a count of these things that happen. And those statistics have dominated tennis for a long time, but they're not the most important statistic at all. It's far more important to look at the win percentages. So it's like, how many times did it happen, but how many times did I win? And that's going to deliver a percentage. So, you can have these patterns of play that people don't think are good. But if you look at the win percentages, they're amazing. So, when it came to Novak in 2018 at the US Open, Novak came into the net around 150 times for the tournament and won about 75%. And, that was a major part of that tournament. He played some longer matches. The one against John Millman, was really hot and really difficult. And there was a couple of others in there. But when he could come to the net, he did. And he hit great overheads. That tournament, he doesn't always hit great overheads, but that tournament was amazing because there was an end game of, when you approach with your forehand to the backhand, you take that first volley behind, your end game is an overhead. So it matters a lot when you're expecting somebody to lob versus I'm coming to the net and I don't know what they're going to do and they lob me and you can miss it. I think what happened in that tournament the most is that we had a major focus on the 0 through 4. He did very, very well there. In 9+, where most people think Novak dominates opponents, I think he won 131 and lost 133. So he had a losing record. And you would never say
Novak would have a losing record in those long rallies, but he did far better in 0 through 4, and basically breaking even in 9+, and that's what tennis is. So it doesn't matter if you're a 12-year-old girl or you're the number one man or woman in the world. The first 2 times you touch the ball are more important than anything else that follows.
And we've been teaching, I guess, juniors to be more consistent. Do you think coaches these days have been overboard on consistency?
Well, there's yes and no. Yes and no.
Okay.
So we'll start with a no standpoint. When you begin tennis, when you start to play a lot, if you can't hit 4 balls in a row in the court, you can't play tennis. So as a coach, one of the first things you're going to do is teach consistency. It's a little bit of grips and a little bit of footwork, but let's just get the ball going back and forth. Let's get some rallies going. And when you go out and play socially, just let's hit the ball back and forth 20 times. It's a miracle we can keep that ball going for that long. So consistency is always a part of our sport. But before we had match analytics, we thought, well, that's it. Just be consistent, you're going to win. And it's just simply not true. The other side of the coin is the players that win the 0 through 4 rally length win the match around 90% of the time. The players that win the long rallies only win the match around 55% of the time. So it's what you're looking for in the consistency. And it's kind of a new term of consistency now, is that the old way was say, okay, let's make 20 balls in a row and do that 4 times. Whereas when you look at the data now, it suggests, let's just make 4 balls in a row and do that 20 times, because making 4 balls in a row, even if it's 2 for you and 2 for me, is not easy. And the shots that we hit in there, the serve, the return, serve +1, return +1, are not hit when we're hitting ball after ball after ball after ball, when we're hitting repeated ground strokes. So it's just different skills. It's different strokes. It's a shovel. It's a pick. It's not a chainsaw. There's different things, different instruments that we're using. So coaching's a blend of both. Yes, players, we want to feed their insatiable appetite to touch the ball and to feel rhythm, but at the same time, knowing where winning and losing really happens, let's get rhythm with the serve. Let's get rhythm with second serves out wide, followed by a forehand. So once we know what matters to winning, we can start to bring these two together and let the metrics of the match court really flow over into how we organize the practice court.
I'm just curious, you said that from the 0 to 4 length, it's 70% of the rallies, and 5 to 8, it's 20%, and 9+, it's 10%. Is that the same as doubles as well, in doubles?
No, and those numbers come from the 2015 Australian Open, which was a quicker tournament. So Wimbledon's higher than that, but the US Open's a little lower than that. But, as 70-20-10s, it's just a great yardstick. It's easy to remember. Even if it's 67 or, it comes off a little bit or goes to 72, think of that as the yardstick. I'm sorry, what was the second part to your question?
I was saying that, is that same for doubles as well, in doubles?
Oh, for doubles. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's more. It's much more in 0 through 4 in doubles and much less in 9+ in doubles.
Okay,
so,
of course.
In some instances, in a lot of instances when I'm coaching and talking about singles and doubles, they're just two different sports. Singles is very much, we've got real crystal clear patterns. It's like, run these patterns. Whereas doubles is extremely situational. You've got a lot of what ifs. What if the lefty's in the juice court? What if my service partner's got a bad backhand volley? What if I serve at the body and they're lobbing? What if we're slow? And there's just a myriad of what ifs in doubles. So that just don't exist in singles. So the way you talk,
so moving on to serving and volleying, what are your thoughts on it? Is it a dying art or a winning formula?
I love it. So there's nothing not to like. So once again, we go back to the 2 columns of percentages. So, I think I did an analysis. It's on one of my keynote presentations where I've got 2002, I think, to 2017 at Wimbledon, also all the serve and volley. Now, I use Wimbledon simply because the other tournaments don't have historical data. You can't get this at the US Open or the Australian Open, which is just a tragedy in its own right. But Wimbledon is the only tournament in the world that has the historical data that allows you to see it and share it with you. You know, surely the US Open has it, but I can't get it. I'm on site. You know, whether I'm in a coach's role or a journalist role, you just can't get it. So it's a disaster. But
sorry,
what's that?
I was saying, is it effective on all surfaces or just fast surfaces, you think?
No, it's effective everywhere. Everywhere. So you start back in 2002, you were serving volleying around 30% of the time, and it used to be over 50%. And even over 50% in second serves, it used to be. But anyway, so let's go to 2002, around 30, but around 2012, it's at 6. So it's just died. It's just 50 to 30 to 6. So when you look at that column, you say, well, serve volley's dead. It's terrible. It's like, you know, players aren't doing it. But you go to the second column, it's like, well, what are the win percentages? And it's always 65, 66, 67. You know, there's one year where if you serve volley 30% of the time, must have been 2002, you know, you win 67%. But in 2014, if you serve volley 6% of the time, you win 67%. So, you know, the analogy there is that we gave up on serve and volley. Serve and volley never gave up on us. And, you know, it's a herd mentality where, you know, kind of like 5 people out of 100 spread this vicious, untrue rumor that you can't serve and volley in today's game. And it's just false. So, you know, you can look at it, even at Roland Garros on clay courts, serving and volleying works great. You've got players standing way back. You can hit a hard kick serve and you can almost almost run right to the net and grab it. By the time, you know, the player, you know, hits the shot, that they're so far back. So yeah, serve and volley works. There's on every surface, no problem.
And I guess the question that listeners want to know is, do you have any interesting stats on maybe the serve and return that might be surprising for the listeners?
Well, the number one rally length in tennis is just one shot. So it's around 30% of all points. So quite often when you ask this question to people, it's like, which is the most common rally length? They'll say, a 4-shot rally. Or I spoke with a coach yesterday evening and he said a 6-shot rally. Yeah. You know, and it's a coach that has a lot of history in our sport, you know, really good junior and played college tennis and is now coaching. And obviously he's watched a lot of tennis and, you know, he's about 500% off. But, you know, all the shorter rallies, all the, you know, the serve and return, these points happen and they go into our short-term memory and we delete them. You know, we forget about them. And the long rallies we remember and, you know, they stick in our brain. So I think the surprising thing is how many one-shot rallies and rally length in tennis is predicated on the ball landing in the court, not the ball hitting the string. So if I serve to you and you miss it, you would make a return error. That's a rally length of 1. So if you're out there wanting to win more matches, I would highly suggest you start working more on making more returns.
I guess like the game of tennis is basically made up of errors and unforced errors, especially even in the amateur club players, even more so.
The term unforced error, we need to get rid of it. It's just, it's a win or it's an error. It either hits the strings or it doesn't. There's no benefit at all. In fact, there's a lot of negativity surrounding the unforced error because once again, we get this paradigm in our mind that, you know, the serve, the return, and there's an error. It's like, okay, points in tennis should be long. Therefore, if they end short, we make this unforced error, and it's just wrong. You know, the start of the point has more errors. You know, the first 4 shots has around 80% errors. It's difficult. The serve is tough. You know, hitting second serves in the court's not easy. Returning first is easy. Hitting a second serve and having a guy rifle a ball back to you and spray it back into the court somehow is, you know, there's a lot of errors there. So you're far better off just saying we eliminate the term unforced error. It's subjective. It's wrong a lot of the time. You know, I recently went to the PTR International Symposium, and I've got 350 coaches there in the room, you know, big presentation, and I've got 12 points. from Nadal and John Millman at the US Open, and that are all some type of error. It's either a forced error or an unforced error. So I make all the coaches, all of them stand up. And I say, okay, watch this point. And then you've got to vote, turn around and talk to the coach next to you and say, what you think, was there a forced error, an unforced error?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if anyone's going to know, it's going to be a tennis coach, right? I mean, that's our job. Yeah. We need to know what this is. So I show them to them, they all talk. After one, half the room sitting down. So we do the second one. They all talk. After two, 350 turns into 4. And after 3, they're all sitting down. I did it at a US PTA convention up here with about 100 in the room. And after 2, they'd all sit down. So when I went through the 12 points, they'd all sit down about 4 times. So I look at a point, I was like, well, I've got my opinion, but I've got a coach sitting next to me who's got, just as many years in the game, and he'll say something different. We don't know. There is no criteria. You can't go and Google what is an unforced error. There's no rule book. There's no, place that we can automatically go, every tennis coach or you or a player goes, what is an unforced error? What is the official designation? It's nowhere. It's not only nowhere, but we would all get it wrong. So it's really messes with how we portray our sport, that we portray errors as bad. And in fact, errors we play a sport of errors. There's at least 70%, sometimes 80% of what we're doing. Therefore, we get on this roller coaster where we win the point, we're happy. We lose the point, or especially we make an error, we're sad, we're upset, we're angry, we're frustrated. We're quitting tennis because we think errors shouldn't happen, because we're this unforced error. I shouldn't make unforced errors. You're going to make a ton of errors. You're going to make a ton of errors. And I have a new course out called Getting Tight. And a great term in there, I did it with a gentleman named Jeff Greenwald. And Jeff is a sports psychologist. And he was #1 in the world. He won the ITF World 35s and 45s. So great player and great mind. And he has this term called permission to miss. And permission to miss means you're going to make some errors. You have permission to miss some shots. And in fact, we want you to have a quota of how many points and games that are okay to lose against this person. And once you have permission to miss in your head, once you have a quota, it's a completely different sport. It relieves you. When you make an error, you're not doing this roller coaster. If I lost the point, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm throwing my racket, I'm yelling and screaming, and I'm an embarrassment out here. I mean, it goes down. I just wrote a blog today with 2 testimonials of a coach. One was with his son, who used to get crazy mad out there on the court. And then he taught him permission to miss, and he's making errors, and he's fine. And another one where he's playing a practice set, and this other 14-year-old boy had never beaten him. And all of a sudden he beats him because he didn't beat himself from getting mad about errors. So it helps to look at our sport a little differently there.
I mean, another staggering fact I watched in one of your presentations was that to be the best, Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, all you have to do is win 55% of the total points in the match. I couldn't believe that stat. Yeah.
So even a little bit more on that. Where I looked at the last 5 years, they're 55 point something, all of them. When they're finished, they're #1 in the world. So it's right at that. It's either 55.5 or 55.3 or 55.6. Sometimes when Nadal won, he played Roland Garros the first 10 times. He wins 9, he loses to Soderling in the other one. So he goes 66-1. He still only won 56%. 56-1 is still only, even a top 50, if you're 50 in the world, you're basically winning 50% of your points. If you're top 10 in the world, you're winning about 55. Superman of Roland Garros with 9 titles in 10 years is 56. So those are the thin margins that our sports build on.
I mean, you're a part of Team Djokovic for 3 years until this year. How did that job come about?
I was in Indian Wells, a meeting with PlaySite, and one of the investors in PlaySite and a guy that I respect greatly is Gordon Ewing. Gordon is in New Jersey. He has some clubs up there. Court Sense, I believe, is what they're called. And Gordon was in the meeting, and we're talking about the relationship of kind of bringing brain game tennis and play sight together, so that, you know, they've got the analytics and I've got the patterns and the coaching and the improvement side of it. And I'm showing him what I do, and he's sitting there kind of, you know, blown away a little bit by all these new ways I look at it. He said, "Have you ever talked to Novak?" And I said, "No, I haven't." So he goes, "I'll put you in touch with him." So I met with Marian Vida about a month later in Monte Carlo and showed Marian all the video work, all the analytics. And we talked for about 6 months on and off, and they finished the season, and we started in 2017, sat down, you know, with Novak and Marian, and we got all our expectations on what we wanted to have happen and what Novak wanted and what I can deliver and what Marian wanted. And we went for 3 years, and it was phenomenal. And Goran Ivanisevic came on board later this year, and it's just kind of not his deal. He doesn't like the analytics so much. He's a little bit more old school, which is fine. And, you know, he's the kind of new lead coach. And we've, you know, so I finished with Novak at the end of this year, but we're still very good friends. And, you know, he has a lot of respect for the work that I do, but they just go in a different direction, which is fine, which is totally fine. So now I work with 4 other players, and they're doing great. So, you know, you kind of move on. You know, it's just such a shame that our season is not only being cut short, but it may be over before we even get a chance. So let's hope we get some tennis in this year.
Yeah. And you didn't travel with him to every tournament, right? It was just on the majors, or was it the big tournaments?
Yeah, so the way that I work it is that, you know, I'm here in Austin at the moment, and my work is first and foremost set up so I can be remote. I need, you know, the things that I do the most are, for every single match that Novak plays, and the other players I'm playing with, I deliver a pre-match game plan, a strategy analysis, a scouting report. This is what to expect. This is how you play this guy. Here are his tendencies. I need video for that, and I need analytics. I don't necessarily need to be at the tournament. And with these players that I'm working with, you know, almost always they're on a show court, or their opponents are, or I've seen their opponents before. So my business is set up to not be at the event, but I am at a lot of the events anyway through my brain game tennis business, whether I'm the analyst at Wimbledon, or whether I'm doing research, or whether I'm this, you know, have some other capacity. I work a lot with Infosys at the tournament. So, you know, I could be at an event and have 5 or 6 things going on, one of which is working with the players. So I purposely set my business up that I don't have to be there, but I can still work with you.
And then with Djokovic, we talk about him having the best backhand, the best return in the game. What about his mind, the ability to raise his game even when the crowd's going against him?
Yeah, I would say that's good. You know, that's obviously insanely difficult for him to deal with out there. You know, it's part of your job. I mean, if you don't like 15,000 people screaming against you, then don't play tennis, you know, on the world stage. So he does a very good job with that. But where he's better is, you know, so many times we'll sit down before the match, we'll go through the game plan, and this is where there's, you know, we map it out, you know, all these different scenarios where there's first serve, juice court, you know, at 50, you know, at 15 all versus 40-15 versus love all these different, you know, different situations that can come up. And his ability to get inside the opponent's brain, to tap in there and live, you know, if the match is 2 hours long, he lives in the opponent's brain for 2 hours. He's constantly figuring out what they're going to do. He's figuring out their patterns. He's figuring out what they want to do before they even know what they want to do. So Novak's ability to have an insanely good awareness of the opponent and stick to a game plan. There's times that I remember sitting at the Australian Open, you know, watching Novak play and sitting with a friend and going, okay, you know, but based on what I'm seeing and what the point score is, you know, I'd say this serve's going, you know, wide to Nadal's backhand. Nadal's going to go down the middle to Novak's backhand. Novak's going to run around it and crush it through the ad court. Rafa's going to run over there with a running forehand, and he's going to miss it going down the line in the alley. And we sit there and watch it, and it's exactly what happens. So, it doesn't happen all the time like that, but it's, sometimes you can pick exactly what's going to happen. You can pick the rally length. You can pick the zones on the court, because Novak, is so locked into, here is the point score, here is the strategy, here's what my opponent's expecting. Do I go primary and do what I want to do? Do I go secondary and mix it? And he's just as good as anyone. In fact, you could make a very strong argument that he's better than anyone in the world in that particular mental part of the game, in breaking down and understanding an opponent.
And concerning he was Novak Djokovic, was he the easiest player you worked with?
He was great. And we never, ever had a problem. There was never any, there's certainly potential there. I could sit down and I was kind of waiting for it for a while. I'd sit down and I'd go, Novak, this is how you play team, or this is how you play Zverev. And, I was kind of, I got to laugh to myself a little bit. I deliver it and I go, okay, what's he going to say? And sometimes, I'm kind of ready for you to go, no, Craig, no, I remember playing him, 2 months ago. No, we played him a different way. Never did we have that conversation. He would always drink in the information. You'd always give him time to let it marinate. And he asked a lot of questions, whether it was with Marion or myself, or, thinking out loud, just as good as it gets of a tennis mind. And we look at his game and, we marvel at his speed. We marvel at his defensive capabilities and how he can slide around a court and how he fights so well. But for me, his ability to execute a game plan to perfection, which we quite often see him do, is just incredible.
I mean, with all these numbers and data available in tennis, you still say we're only scratching the surface. What is yet left to discover, and what are you working on now?
Yeah, so we are still scratching the surface. There's so much more that I'm looking to get into. And, I was looking to get into it this year before the pandemic, but even now, it still gives a lot of time. I'm very busy working on my website and doing research and writing stories to the ATP. And I greatly enjoy that. It's fun to be home here in my home office and, being productive and delivering things that are around the world. There's still a lot of people out there that are like, okay, I'm stuck at home, but I want to be productive. I want to learn. So the courses still do well in this kind of environment. But I forgot your question again. I'm sorry. I get on tangents. Like I'm on 5 lily pads over there. Different. I got 5 different ideas going on. So, but I want to answer your question. So what was it again?
I was saying, with all these data left, with these data, what is there to left to discover?
Oh yeah. I knew it was a good question. I knew I wanted to get back to it.
Yeah.
So for instance, let's say, for example, Novak hits at the moment. Today, as you say, you look in a match and Novak hits 24 winners.
Okay.
You go, okay, good. That's interesting. But then, there's just a real simple layup, because we want to know more. We want to know, where's the bullseye? There's going to be at least half of them that have the same quality. So let's say, for example, Novak's got 24 winners. We cut out just a real simple cut up. Well, was he serving when that happened, or was he returning when that happened? And then you're going to find that 16 happened when he was serving, and only 4 happened when he was returning. It's so much tougher to hit a forehand winner when you start returning. So then we say, okay, well, I wonder what the rally length was when he hit the forehand winner. And you're going to find out of that 16, you're going to find 12 of them were in a 3-shot rally. And then you're going to look and say, okay, well, what was the shot that he hit? Or where did he serve? And you're going to find, a lot of them are the slider out wide and the ball comes to the middle. And out of those, he's serving one way and hitting the winner the other way. So we can, it's just simply what happened before. What's the common denominator? Because so many times when you hit a winner, it's the shot before that matters, or it's the serve that matters. Sometimes the winner is just the nice, easy icing on the cake at the end. So, we're going to cut tennis up by here's all the things that happen when you serve. Here's all the things that happen when you return. So if you kind of, as an example, if you pick two main qualities you're looking for that you're coaching a player, like, okay, we want these two things. So let's say, all right, we're starting points with first serves. We want 3-shot rallies. So that's a serve in, a next ball in, and then the next ball goes in, and it's either that's a win or it's probably an error. So 4 shots can be hit, but we want to force an error on that 4th shot, and we want you at the net. First serve, you go to the net behind a first serve and a 3-shot rally. That's the most. So so we want 3-shot rallies and we want net. Second serves, completely different. We want no double faults or very few double faults and very few serve +1 errors. Sometimes backhand, sometimes forehand. So it's like not make an error and not make an error, which is the polar opposite of what I said for what we wanted on a first serve. And a first serve return, we want it in, and we want it in. Yeah. We want survival. And a second serve return, we want aggression, and then we want a forehand on the next shot. So each one of those 4 things has a completely different subset that we're working on, and that's where tennis is headed. In the next year or two, we're going to really know a lot about that.
I mean, I guess the final question is, over the years of being a tennis analyst, what is the single stat that surprised you the most when you saw it?
That 30% of all tennis points are 1 shot. So it's a combination. Yeah. It's that 1 shot. A 1-shot rally happens more than anything else. But it was also, I think, when I first figured it out at the Australian Open in 2015, that the men were playing 70% of their points were 0 through 4. That means 70% of all points, each player only hit the ball a maximum of twice. Serve next. That's it. 7 points out of 10. And I look at the practice court where it's 90% is, we're hitting repetition forehands and backhands, but 7 points out of 10 have literally no repetition in forehands and backhands. It's not a forehand followed by a forehand. If it's a forehand followed by a serve, or it's a forehand followed by a return, which is different, way different than a rally forehand. So when I saw that, I'm like, our practice court is broken, and we need way more serve and return work than we're doing, because it's an add-on. It's an add-on, and it's front and center in a match, and it's an add-on in practice.
So basically, in the practice court, we should be maybe practicing 4 or 5 shot rallies instead of going back and forth,
You want to practice patterns. You want to think of a match and just cut a match up into these derivatives. So you've got 100 different kind of combinations. Practice them. Practice those patterns. More serving, but do it as a pattern. So it's a serve. How data's changed me as a coach. I used to just do like serving, just hit a serve. Watch the serve, hit the fence, watch it hit the court, hit the fence, do another one. Now I do a little bit of that still, but I'll do a lot of, here's the serve, and then I'll feed the return. So you're doing a 2-shot combo, a serve followed by a serve +1, a return followed by a return +1. So, it's sequences. Here's a 3-shot sequence. Here's a 2-shot sequence, because that's real. That happens. If it happens in a match, it makes our practice court.
I guess, Craig, it's been an educational experience for me. But if listeners want to know more about the stuff we've been talking about, they can visit your website, which is www.braingametennis.com, right?
Braingametennis.com is my website. If you are brand new into tennis, you're beginning and starting off, by far the best place to start is your 25 golden rules of single strategy and 25 golden rules of double strategy. The mental side, the brand new course, Getting Tight, is amazing. And then there's several other courses, such as the first 4 shots or game plan, that really show how to organize your practice court and how to understand what's happening in a match.
And you're active on social media, Twitter?
Twitter's good. I really enjoy Twitter, excuse me, especially at events, because you can be so quick. But I tell you, I don't go on Twitter nearly as much these days because it's angry out there, Twitter's angry. So I'll pop in there, but not as much. You know what I do like is Instagram. You know, on my phone here, I have over 70,000 pictures. And I just love taking pictures, you know, all over the world. I'll go to Rome and go to the tournament, and I'm just, you know, I'm taking pictures of the Colosseum and the Forum and, you know, all these things. So I really enjoy photography. It's kind of a little side hobby. So, you know, I just like playing around with, you know, taking pictures of the landscapes. You know, some are tennis, but other stuff. But, you know, Twitter's kind of, you know, let's get stuff out quickly. Facebook, not as much, a little bit there. But, you know, you don't want to spend too much time on social media. Let's enjoy the great outdoors.
I didn't mention this before the interview, but we've actually seen each other before. I didn't say hi, but we saw each other in Monte Carlo and at the O2 in London last year.
Yeah, okay, you look familiar, but you know what's really difficult?
Yeah.
When you see people in different places. So there's a really good chance if I saw you for a second time in the same place as the first,
yeah,
I would remember you would be connected. Your face and the location would be connected. But I get this a lot. It's like, oh, Craig, I saw you in Monte Carlo. I'm like, I'm not connecting the place. So it makes it more difficult. But wonderful to see you again.
Next time, I'll definitely say hi and shake your hand then.
Well, was it you said it was at the O2 finals as well?
Yeah, Monte Carlo and at the O2 finals, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we get to play again this year. That would be it's almost a bridge too far at the moment, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Craig, stay safe and stay healthy.
Eric, same to you.
All right. I'll see you soon.
Cheers, mate.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.